Hello everyone and welcome back. This is part 2 of the video I put out day before yesterday installing a DD7 in this twin cam, and where I left off was setting the end plate on the main drive gear bearing, and we talked about spacers. I'll put a link in the description of that video, so if you're catching this one, make sure you go back and watch the first one. I said I wasn't going to talk very much in that video, and I'm feeling the results of that with a very full email box with a whole bunch of questions. So the target is 1/2 to 2/1000 as directed by Baker. I was shooting for a 1/1000 clearance, so I want to set it right down the middle. And we're going to check it here. And I have exactly 1/1000, so I'm going to spin it a little bit. Check it again. I have exactly 1. Spin it a little. Have exactly 1 again, and we'll go a little more. And it's a little tighter there, almost 1. But in the entire way around, I'm certainly between 1/2 to 2, but achieving my target of 1 thou end plate. So now, let's go talk about these spacers. After that video, man, did I get the emails. There were a couple of very good questions on in the comments section of the last video, but boy, did I get a bunch of emails. People largely freaking out, which wasn't my intent, to make you freak out over this deal. But some of the questions were, where can I get those spacers? Can you call Baker and get more spacers? Where can you get different thicknesses and things like that? And guys, the whole intent wasn't to scare you. The reality of it is, I did want to impress upon you that that measurement is important. And I say all of that. Some of you may think, yeah, we know it's important, but you don't see the emails and messages that I get. I would say still I get several when people call to order cams and they want gear drive, or someone that's setting up a bottom end. I get questions weekly from people. How important is that 3/1000 run out on a crank for gear drive? How important is that crankshaft end play? This person tells me that, it should be set up to say 2 thou, no more than 3, but I've got 5. That's close enough, isn't it? And the answer is no, it's not. When a range is given of a measurement, it's the tightest and the most loose that you would want it to be. Exceeding those in either direction is not a good thing, and it's not advisable. So there's a reason in Baker's engineering when they made the sleeve and then they put the races in that adapter sleeve there, there are manufacturing tolerances with everything. And it could be in that sleeve, it could be in the bearing. And that's why it's so important when you use a tapered main bearing, be it neck bearings, be it crank bearings, be it wherever it is, that you always keep the race mated with the bearing. They are machined to be together. And so it's an important aspect. So when they say 1/2 to 2/1000, that measurement is important, and it should be maintained. So that being said, yes, they give you 5 spacers plus the one that's pre-installed, and I want to give you guys an idea. We said 1/2 to 1, and remember my dimension was I needed a spacer that was 0.08 thinner so that the bearings would be closer together because I had too much in play. So let's go through some of these spacer thicknesses. Now, and I know a lot of this is going to be for some of you DIY guys. Understand, you know your tools. You have to know your tools. And yes, this is a Metatoyo. And these are relatively expensive compared to what you can get at, say, a big box retailer, for example. And you have to pay attention to how hard you push on these tools sometimes. Remember, we're working from 1/2 to 2/1000. That's only a 1.5 difference. Well, you can take inexpensive calipers and push a little harder on one measurement than you can another. And the needle could make as much as a 1/2 to a 1 thou difference when you take your measurement. And that's just how it is. So you have to know your tool and the quality of it because, yes, even sometimes tools can flex. So, like, for example, I'll just start out measuring this one. I want to give you guys an idea of the range. This one comes out at exactly 100 thousandths. All right, the next one we measure is 101.5 thousandths. Now, yes, this is a 1 thou caliper, but if you're used to using your tools, the needle is in the middle. That's pretty close to a 1/2 thousandths, right? So I'm at 101.5. So that's a difference of 1.5. This one is at 103.5. And if I measure around it, 103.5, always do that. Take several measurements all the way around. This one varies from 103 to 103.5. This one is at 107.5, 107.5, 107.5. And then this one here is at 105.5, well, actually 106, depending on exactly where I measure it. And of course, I have zeroed it out before I took these measurements. So you can see there's several thousandths variance here. And the others comments that I saw was, you know, folks freaking out. I don't have a grinder. I don't have this. I don't have a machine shop. I can't, you know, fix this. Well, if you've got to make it tighter, essentially all you've got to do is find the spacer that's closest to the measurement that you need. Maybe if you know, in our case, we needed to remove 8 thousandths, well, you just find a spacer that's 5 thousandths narrower. Maybe we've got another 3 thousandths we need to take out. Well, really, if you don't have access to a grinder, you know, like with a mag base, precision grinder type thing, or even a mag base for your mill or whatever the case may be, all you got to do is a piece of sandpaper and a rubber stopper. Remember, we're only talking 1 or 2 thousandths here, not that big of a deal. A piece of sandpaper, lay it down, find sandpaper, get yourself a rubber stopper, and you can wet, you know, say if you've got like a marble surface or a countertop or something, just wet it. The sandpaper will do a pretty good job of sticking to it, or just put a piece of double-sided tape down, and then get your rubber stopper, and then just sit there and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, take your measurement, back and forth, back and forth, and you can do it that way. Yeah, it'll take you a lot longer, but if you do it on a flat surface and you got good technique, it'll work. You know, you do that kind of thing all the time. So I don't want people to freak out over this, but what I did want people to understand is me stressing how important that measurement is. If you measure it and it's 3 thou in play, 3.5, no, that's not close enough. 0 to 2, and then your transmission will last you much longer, and it won't be noisy. It won't be sloppy. The bearing won't get hot and self-destruct if it's too tight, you know, that type of thing. So let's get back to it. Really, at this point, what I'm going to do is slide the cassette in, and I want you guys to see, talk about a couple of areas you may have to clearance inside the transmission. Let's get everything removed here. Okay, just to do the checklist, yes, we have a clip in here, and what would happen next, of course, is the seal would go in with the spacer that goes in as well. We're not going to put that in yet. And of course, you have your shifter pawl that puts in, that you have to put in, that slides in from this back side, and then there's a seal, you know, it goes in there and clips and all that. I'll show how to do that in the other video. Before I put anything in there, I want to check fitment of the gears to make sure there's no interference on the inside of the case. There is a gasket that has to go underneath the speed sensor. So the speed sensor is removed, and what I'm looking at particularly, it seems in this area right here, primarily it's the M8s, the M8 case, that you can have a little bit of contact right here with the gear, and it just rubs, and it's a very delicate touch, I guess. It doesn't actually dig into it or prevent you from sliding it in, but it'd be just enough to keep you from spinning it. So you have to pay attention. You have to check this sort of thing. And sometimes this area right here specifically, you can get a rotary file and then just grind a little bit. And it doesn't take much, maybe only 30 to 40 thousandths just to clearance it. Now, of course, with the powder coat in the case, it's nice and easy to see some witness marks, and what I like to do is leave the gasket off, because that gasket compressed is about 20 thousandths of an inch. So I know that if I slide it in without the gasket and have no interference in this area because it's tapered a little, then I certainly won't, and we'll have at least a 20 thou clearance in this direction once I add the gasket. So it's a nice, easy way to check it. A couple pieces of advice here. One, you'll notice I left that rubber tip on there, the cover on the shaft, just so we don't damage the seal on the other side. And I've oiled the shaft, oiled the seal, and one thing you want to make sure of, see that shift drum right there? Do not pick the transmission up by that shift drum. All right, it will cause some problems, so don't do that. Let's slide it in there nice and easy and see what we get. You should also have your pins on the back side of this, on the back side of your trap door here. You should have those alignment pins there. And of course you have your neutral switch there, and it's a little ball detent. We want to be careful. We need to wiggle this around just easy. Don't force it, don't beat anything. You're lining up your secondary shaft bearing, you're lining up the shaft on the back side of your shift drum, and we just want to make sure everything lines up nice and easy. All right, now shouldn't have to force it. A little bit of wiggle here and there. I'm going to go ahead and turn the shaft. So far it feels good. I've got no interference yet. Turning the main drive gear. I'm going to go ahead and bump this in there. See if we feel anything. Nothing yet. Seat this. Oh, that's why we check it. My main shaft just locked up. Okay, so let's bump that out just a little bit by hand, bump it in by hand, and the main shaft is locked up. This is why we're checking this. All right, see, not turning. Bump it back out a little. And the reason I'm bumping it out is I want to leave the witness mark so I can see exactly where it is that it's hitting. Right there. All right. And all I'm trying to do here is scratch off some of the powder coat, okay? And actually that was, you're going to laugh, enough for it to clearance itself, it seemed. But we're still going to take the time to remove some of that material with a rotary file. There we go. All right, perfect. It left a perfect witness mark for us. Now, keep in mind, if I had put the gasket in there, it may not hit. It may be very, very close. But you can clearly see right there the witness mark that was left behind, right? And it was just enough to shave some powder coat and a little bit into the aluminum. So also keeping in mind when I put the gasket on there, it's going to move that out 20 thousandths. But what I need to do here, of course, rotary file and just clear this out just a little bit. Of course, you can see that I packed a bunch of rags back in there to make sure that I didn't get any of the shavings into the main drive gear, the bearing and such. I'm going to take the time to flush this out with some brake cleaner. With that out of the way, I like to go back with a microfiber just because towels typically leave lint behind. Let's get all that out. And of course, remember too, right here is the hole for your drain plug. You want to make sure that your drain plug is out and you flush this hole out as well, because a lot of the chips can go down in there. And then I would highly recommend throwing this away. so it doesn't contaminate anything else. All right, let's see how we did. Again, don't force it, guys. It should just slide in there. Just give it enough wiggle. All right, we are seating flat. And now our main shaft is not locked up. Make sure we're get in there all the way. Excellent. That takes care of that. Now, slide it back out, do our gaskets. Use our assembly lube on all of our bearings. Make sure we apply the assembly lube to our main drive gear bearing set. That way we're good to go. I'm going to say that's it for this one, only because I've done so many other transmission videos before. Again, I'll leave links in the description there so you guys can refer back to those on, you know, the actual raw disassembly and then picking up from here with the remainder of the assembly, which is really just installing the shifter pawl mechanism, the seal for that, the main drive gear seal, and the gasket, bolting the transmission together, top cover on it, making sure it works, put fluid in it, and your primary back together, all that other fun stuff. So guys, I hope this helps you out. Hope this answered some of your questions, some of your comments. It certainly answered some of the emails I got where folks were panicking over the spacer thing. Sometimes you just got to think outside the box a little bit. Sometimes some sandpaper on a really good flat surface will fix your problem. You don't have to have necessarily big fancy tools to do stuff. Now, and a lot of this too is, I guess, my strive for perfection, and I know that I want 1 thou out of that. Could I have used another spacer and maybe had 2? Yeah, possibly. Could I have had a half? Yes. But I was targeting 1. It's right in the middle. It's where I wanted it to be. And so that's why we go through that extra step. So, guys, take care of yourselves and each other. It's probably going to be several days before I can do another video. I wanted to get all these transmissions done, and man, I certainly have a bunch, some engines to build. I've got a bunch end frames. I've got cylinders and heads to bolt together and all that stuff for a bunch of folks, and excited to see things rolling out of here. So, guys, well, I appreciate you very much. Have a great rest of your weekend. Take care.